with a good friend of mine who happens to be an engineer, and we often talk about the mechanics of things.
Right.
And we were talking about the frequency versus high frequency versus low frequency. And I pointed out that androgens are a major player in motor learning. They actually allow you to learn technical skills faster, to the point where back in the GDR days, they were giving androgens to ice skaters and gymnasts.
Everybody.
They really didn't need additional muscle. They just wanted the neurological motor learning function. So anyway, I tend to be the language guy, and I tend to say quippy, linguistic things. And I said, so, enhanced athletes have a motor learning advantage, or the converse of that would be, unfortunately, naturals have a learning disability.
Oh my, that's funny as hell.
I thought it was, but again, I've thrown some ire.
Yeah, fair enough. But what I was also going to say, this is a while back, for about a month, high frequency bodybuilding was super faddish on YouTube because people had ebooks to sell. And of course, me being me, I did a pissy little thing about the real reason this, because the research doesn't support it whatsoever, despite all these theories about muscle protein synthesis rates and durations and all this other shit. Because people forget that, yes, muscle protein synthesis is part of it, but there are way more systems than that are adapting over muscle protein breakdown, capillaries, mitochondria, and whatever. And this guy who got pissy with me, I won't name, was like, well, it's you have to keep the movements grooved. I go, dude, if you need to groove a barbell curl every fucking day, you are what my coach used to call a motor moron, and you need to pick a different sport. Yeah,
Agreed.
When I was younger, if I only squatted once a week, because I was a motor moron. Actually, my testosterone was low. I would forget how to do it. Every Monday, it was like relearning. But if I put in a light front squat day on Friday, I would be fine. But it's like for the most bodybuilding movements, I'm sorry, how much practice do you need on a pec deck? For fuck's sake, this is not an argument that you're going to make to me that I'm going to buy about high frequency for bodybuilding.
And you brought up Kurt Karwoski, and I think that's a perfect example. You look at Ed Cohn, Kurt Karwoski, even Kazmaier, literally the gold standards of powerlifting, eternal.
Yeah,
they were historically one body part per week, just very, very. Cohn, you could consider it maybe crossover because he squatted on one day and deadlifted on another, and he had a very similar technique in each.
Yes.
His squat was deadlift like, and his deadlift was squat like.
Yeah.
I accept that, but even still, by the numbers, he squatted once per week, and he was the best that has ever walked this fucking earth.
Agreed. Yeah, and yes, and that's getting way off topic. And I want to come back to my dumb pump theory because I want you to shit all over. Because it's just funny. It's just one of my dumbass ideas. Even with all this new technology, and I know I could get you bitching about shitting on West Side for the next 3 hours, and maybe that's a whole separate podcast. We can just shit on West Side. But all this technology, and we're just like, oh yeah, and fucking bands and chains and frequency and this and that and the other. And it's like, all right, outside of the geared powerlifting, where people are now benching over 1,000 pounds, but because it's not the shirt doing it whatsoever. That's why absolutely it's not the shirt. Even the guy whose name I forgot completely, who's squatted over 1,000 raw, motherfucker, he's 400 pounds, right? He is a giant among men. Is not to denigrate the lift. It is the all-time greatest lifts of all time, but he had outside of geared lifting, have the records in raw powerlifting really improved? And the answer is there are more outliers because there's more people entering. I believe Greg Nuckols did in one of his tedious analyses of this, where he goes, look, the average result in powerlifting, despite 20 years of Louis Simmons, change, bands, conjugate, board, this, that, the other, the average results have not changed. There are occasional extreme outliers because we're getting some freak shows. Yep. But whether you squat 2 or 3 times a week, that will be up to your individual.
And this is, again, a whole nother shitstorm. But if you look at the relaxation of the implementation of the rule book, it's arguable that powerlifting is actually worse than it was 20 or 30 years ago.
True enough, except maybe USAPL, but they keep having lifters get popped for drugs. So they are the nightmare of the sport.
There are guys out there, to your point, Maddox and some of these guys that are benching well over 700 pounds raw now. But again, they are 400 plus pound human beings. Again, doesn't negate the thing. It Absolutely. Just but if you draw a line in terms of what super heavy weights historically did, it's really not aberrant. It's just the next progression of people are now big enough and can take enough drugs to do that.
Yes, absolutely. So so all this stuff, and don't get me wrong, the power lifter I train, she does a high frequency, but honestly, she is a bit of a motor moron. This is not it is specific to her because I've trained her. I've known her